Was Muhammad a prophet?
Did he prophesy? Yes.
Was Muhammad a messenger of God? Would you struggle believing the story of Muhammad?
So Jesus has pushback, Muhammad has pushback. I'm sorry, so did Leonardo get pushback.
So
Who is that community didn't say, folks, we have to change the calendar today. No, that didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Greg, how are you, buddy? It is good to be back here to discuss more meta-narratives.
Yes.
A bit of context, nuance, a whole lot of conversation.
Yes.
Probably some intrigue, few disagreements, maybe.
No doubt.
Maybe not. You and I don't agree on a lot of things, but hey, that's
still
okay.
friends.
Yeah, we're still friends. That's okay. Hey, today we have a great one to talk about. It's a bit more historical. In our previous conversations, we spoke about how the religions of this world, 44,000 plus of them, and how a great percentage of them are Christians and Muslims. And usually, in many cases, especially in where we live in North America, most of what is mainstream media about the other is usually the negative.
Yes.
Okay. And I figured, you know what? How about we really talk about the stories of others and go into them, because there's this Christian meta-narrative that says my story is the most sensible one, and my story is the one that people should embrace. There are no strange things in my story. All the strange things are in your story. I mean, how do people believe your story? It is that strange.
Yeah.
So I think, you know what? that is a conversation that is worth having.
Yes.
I figured we should delve into some of these things. Greg, take for example, let's talk about the birth of Jesus the Messiah. Because when you talk about Islam, Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Jesus the Messiah, these are two great leaders who have there's been a great religious movement that has come to be after their life, work, and ministry, and whatsoever you want to call it. I mean, arguable for Judaism, you could say Abraham, since the writings of the rabbis, and they are always referring to Abraham as our father. The biblical narrative does say Abraham would be the father of the nation.
Yes.
And yes, these great leaders seem to have had a great following. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Instead of saying my story is more believable than yours, how about we put the stories at the same level and we look at them and see what we can learn.
Sure.
And ultimately, maybe be able to answer the question, why is it easier to believe one story over the other? And that, I understand, can be a very complicated question. And so, like I always say, the best place to begin
It's at the beginning.
is at the beginning, the birth of Jesus.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about what you know. I understand that the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, There are a lot of miraculous events that happen around that.
Yes.
He's some sort of predestination for something great. Talk to us.
Okay, so let me, yes, I'd be happy to. Taking the Christian, traditional Christian understanding of Jesus, and particularly his birth, and I think it's a really great place to center our conversation around, is that in the Old Testament, of course,
Yeah.
this is compiled of the prophets that wrote this hundreds and sometimes thousands of years before the birth of Jesus. They predicted when and where he would be born. And it's not just one or two references. My understanding, and I believe I'm underestimating it, but there's over 200 different references when Jesus would be born and how.
Okay.
And so that's the base on it. So Jesus now is born in Bethlehem, and before we get to the actual birth on it, we have this young lady by the name of Mary, who is his birth mother. She has an experience with an angel and says, "You're going to become pregnant with the Messiah, Jesus."
Okay.
So that is the heads up that she gives this young lady. She is a virgin.
Okay, so slow it down, Greg.
Yep.
So, young lady, she's a virgin, and she's going to give birth to the Messiah.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is really interesting because the term that is often referred to is the Messiah, but more importantly, it is Emmanuel. And that is a fantastic word, and is one of my favorite words in the Bible, is it is God with us.
That's the meaning of
That's the meaning of
Emmanuel, God with us.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is a very intriguing component because Christianity has their God coming down to this earth and meeting with them in person. And
Yeah.
he takes on, and again, the understanding is that if he showed up as God and he was masquerading as a human being, we would say, "Oh, isn't that cool?"
Yeah,
He
yeah.
does miracles and the other thing. We're really happy that you're here, but don't ask us to live up to your expectations, because after all, you are God.
You're God,
and,
yeah.
and I'm just this poor smuck down here on this earth.
Yeah.
So what we see here is that he says, "I'll come down and I will take on humanity." So he chooses a virgin, which understandably so.
Yeah.
And now he
You say it's understandable.
because if he said, "Oh, I'm going to choose a birth mother that's had half a dozen kids beforehand," it would not give the credibility or the uniqueness. So in this story, we have a very unique element, a virgin giving birth, which is, and I agree.
Yeah. Let's stop to appreciate that. That can be a bit hard to swallow for many people. We want this. Jesus, the Messiah, is going to be so unique that a virgin is going to be the birth mother.
Yes.
Okay.
So we as humans
Yeah.
struggle with this uniqueness about this birth mother. But in the world religions and what we talked about, the meta-narratives earlier, we quite easily buy into the fact that he is a creator. He created stuff.
Yeah.
And yet we accept that fairly readily. But when it comes to the fact that now he has infused himself into the genetics of this young lady, we say, whoa, this is a bit unbelievable.
Yeah.
The first part of the story is much more of a stretch of faith than the second part of the story, of infusing into the young lady's DNA.
Yeah.
He arrived.
You see, what you're doing right there, Greg, and I like that. You are making the argument that it is within the Christian narrative.
Yes.
These things can be hard to understand, but most people generally believe, even failure to find a better word, stranger concepts, and they're all a part of the story of Christianity.
That's true. So, backing up on that,
Yeah.
if I said to you, I spoke and something was created,
Yeah.
you say, Greg,
You need help.
I need a lot of help.
Yeah.
If I say I took some DNA, some cells from this particular person, and we initiated a new person from it, it would be actually easier stretch of faith than
Yeah.
me speaking something into it.
Yeah.
You probably would say, well, tell me a little bit more about this, but you wouldn't dismiss me. So my point that I'm making is that we need to understand that, yes, there is faith at all different levels.
Yeah.
The greater faith is to say a God spoke something into existence than when he sandwiched some DNA with life and started a new human being.
So, Craig, in the biblical context also, there is a lot of reference to Jesus being the light of the world. And I think at one point he does say that the light has come, but people have preferred darkness. I think that's John.
Yes.
Mr. Director, please fact check me. The light has come. I think it's John chapter 1. The light has come, but people have preferred darkness. And the light being Jesus, the Messiah, in that particular context. And this light motif that is used consistently. It's John chapter 3, actually. Thank you, Mr. Director. This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, and people loved darkness instead of the light because their deeds were evil. So darkness, Jesus is the light. There's this light motif that is used in the story of Jesus, the Messiah, and he's calling people out of darkness into the light. Would you say that's a fair assessment of what the biblical text is saying about Jesus?
Yes. Yes. It is a call to light, and I think the other component of this question is, what light were they missing?
What light were they missing?
Because after all, they were a Jewish community. They had a very good understanding of the writings of Moses and this, you go down the list. There's tremendous amount, particularly the writings of Moses.
Yeah.
And they're the prophets. So they had a fair amount of information. So now they are, as a Jewish community, very guarded with the writings of their prophets. So yet John, we just read, says they need more light.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you understand the light to be?
I think the light here functions at different levels, and one of the levels it's functioning at is the uniqueness of the message of Jesus the Messiah, and a rejection of that message is equivalent to embracing darkness.
So the message is, the light is that Jesus is the Messiah. The Messiah, and I'm working on the understandings that the Christian church typically holds,
Yeah.
is God with us, going back to Emmanuel. And this is a very unique component of the Christian narrative. We have a God that has descended to this planet.
Yeah.
We have a God that has taken on a human body and now is walking around in sandals. And now he is answering, in my opinion, addressing two issues. One is light that you just pointed out,
Yeah.
and darkness. And in the process, he is giving us a picture of who God is.
Okay. So I hear that. Now I want us to compare what you just said, this entire story of Jesus. And there are so many people who are watching this and they belong to another religious affiliation, and they're saying, I don't know about that story. I mean, you're stretching it with all this light stuff.
And here is for me.
Yeah.
This is my biggest stretch for me, is that an eternal God comes down to this earth and steps into humanity.
Okay.
That, I don't think we really appreciate that event.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all talk about Jesus and the little beautiful child in the manger, and we sing wonderful songs at Christmas time about it. And we say, oh, yay, thank you, Jesus, and one day after another. But to grasp this concept that the Creator, the God of the universe, says, this planet, these people need to understand more about who I am, and the light that I am going to bring them isn't the fact that they don't have rules and regulations. They've already got all sorts of that. The light that he's bringing is about who God is. And he steps into our world. He takes on this humanity. He bleeds with us. He sweats with us. He deals with all the humanness that we deal with, and still shows us who God is. And that is an extremely powerful point that is mind-blowing.
Okay, I want to see if you will share the same excitement about this next story.
I'm
Okay.
I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
it.
Now I'm going to close the Christian narrative for a
I only
bit.
got started.
I know. That's why I have to shut it. Lock and key. Okay. I'm opening another narrative.
Yes.
In the Sirah literature, there are several stories that highlight Muhammad's prophetic destiny. There is a story there, to paraphrase the story, we're told that on the forehead of Muhammad's father, there was a light that was radiant. In the similar way as Jesus being the light, this light also seems to function at so many levels. So Muhammad's father had this ever-present light, and that light disappeared when he had a sexual encounter with Amina, who will turn out to be Muhammad's mother. Okay. That light was also seen in a vision by Muhammad's mother, Amina. She saw that light, and here's what happened. This is interesting. The light moved from her pregnant stomach, belly, from her womb, and it went and lit up all of Syria.
Wow.
Okay. And then while she was viewing all of this, she was then instructed to dedicate the male child and name him Mohammed. In the Christian narrative that you just told us,
Yes.
an angel speaks to the virgin and says, you shall give birth to a child. And the prophets are saying, this child is going to be called Emmanuel, God with us.
Yes.
Muhammad's mother also, after this great vision of this same light that she saw in her husband and that she's seeing in vision moving from her womb to the rest of Syria, lighting up all of Syria, she hears a voice saying, hey, this child that you're having, this boy, you have to call him Muhammad. And interestingly, when Muhammad was still a young boy, there's a story about how he met a Christian monk. So, paraphrase, Ibn Hisham records this story, and also Al-Tabari. These are great historians in Islamic literature, in the Islamic experience. So according to the story, Muhammad was either 9 or 12 years old, okay, just somewhere in that time. He was accompanying the Meccans' caravan to Syria. So going there for business, for trade, whatever it was. And he was in the company of Abu Bakr and Abu Talib. And somehow they found themselves in the presence of a Christian monk. So the monk looks at Muhammad and then he prophesies. He reveals Muhammad's destiny.
Wow.
This guy's going to be great. He's going to do this and this and that and this and this and that. And of course, it's shocking to hear that information coming from a monk. Now, Greg, 2 stories, all detailing these 2 great individuals who are yet to, and during their time, were some sort of light. Would you struggle believing the story of Muhammad?
From what you've shared with me, I'm okay with that story. Yeah, okay. I'll sign on and say sure.
You don't sound as excited as you were. I mean, I had to put a lock and key on your story of Jesus. But suddenly, these are the story now. Things are a bit, yeah.
So let me ask you this here.
Yeah.
We both have, as you just pointed out in the text here, the light of the world in John chapter 3.
Yeah.
Muhammad parents have this light for Syria.
Yep.
Okay. The Muhammad story has him sharing light to a region of the world. John talks about to the whole world. Not important, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in Islam, they would argue that that light extends more than that.
Sure. Yeah. And I'll sign on to that.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful that we have this young man that has been commissioned and encouraged to share his light.
So, Craig, here's a difficult question, and I don't only ask you as my friend. I hope a lot of Christians who are watching would also ask themselves this question: Was Muhammad a prophet?
Did he prophesy? Yes.
Was Muhammad a messenger of God?
I think that is a interesting question and a wonderful question. and one that I can only say with certainty that this is a question that God can answer, not me, because who am I to say where divine inspiration should fall? Do I have the criteria and the intellectual understanding of God to say, you know what, this is from God and this isn't from God? What I can point out to is what are the results of the message? Has the message been a positive one? Has been a negative one? Has the core of the message resonated with the God that I understand? So if the message resonates with the God that I understand, I am with the limited understanding that I have, and I got a bit of understanding about the Muslim belief. I'm prepared to say thumbs up.
You remember you and I went through a Pew Research study that highlights that within the next coming couple of years, the population of Islam is going to be, first of all, it's going to catch up to that of Christianity and go above that of Christianity, such that in this world, according to the Pew Research Center, we will get to a point where there are more people who recognize as Islamic than people who recognize as Christian. By that standard alone, can we then argue and say, well, the message that Muhammad had is gaining more momentum?
Therefore, it's a righter or more correct message?
I mean, you said it.
Yeah.
You said it. Because you argued, you said, well, let's look at the outcome. And here is the outcome, according to the Pew Research Center, will have more people who recognize as Islam, as Muslims, in the next coming couple of years.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting question. And the typical response is, if you are gaining traction and momentum, that speaks to the fact that it is, quote, right.
Mm-hmm.
And it also speaks to another component, that it has value. And you can have a story that has value or a narrative that has value that may not be right, but it still has value.
And I like that idea of value, because if we're just looking at numbers alone, more and more people are finding value in this narrative. And it's hard for people in a North American setting where what's always on the front lines it's the negative side of, and yet outside of that, we have more and more and more people who are connecting with this story and finding value. And to be fair, we do have more and more people who are also connecting with the Christian story and finding value in it. And we have to find a way to not lift the merits of one story. Maybe let me ask it this way. Should we be lifting the merits of one story above the other when both stories, at least this portion of it, we have more to talk about here. This portion of it, people are finding value. Instead of, someone who recognizes Christian looking at the story of Muhammad and saying, oh, no, come on. A light from her belly to the rest of the world, to Syria? No way. That is unbelievable. But they are quick to believe that Jesus was the light of the world.
Yeah. So when you compare the stories,
Yeah.
And as far as the light from the stomach, I think that's an interesting anomaly, and I'm going to respect that.
Okay.
The light from the forehead, I'm going to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that necessarily signify that this is going to be a powerful, unique individual? Yes, it all points in that direction, but it doesn't guarantee that.
Did it guarantee it with Jesus?
Absolutely not. He could have, and that's the interesting thing is that Jesus doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be perfect when he showed up. It so happened that he was, but that doesn't guarantee his perfection.
Wow. I need to sit with that one. Yeah, it's a... My goodness, you throw these things at me. I need to sit with that one. Yeah, it's heavy.
I'm okay if you want to take a few minutes and come back again.
Yeah, it's a very heavy one. Or maybe let's look at another portion of the stories. I mean, and it doesn't end here. If I can add, like the biblical narrative, the first 5 books, the Torah, talk about how Abraham was also left kind of the darkness of where he grew up, and he becomes this agent of light, and he becomes the father of a great nation, and this, he's destined for something big. This, you can't miss it in the narrative of Abraham also. And so Judaism has a similar thing that Christianity have through Jesus the Messiah, and the Muslims have through the beginnings of the story of Muhammad. And so I just want us to highlight that and there we are. We all share a similar slant towards how we tell the story. But there's a next portion.
But that actually is, I just want to stop there for a minute here.
Yeah.
In both cases, the calling brought them out into an unfamiliar area. There, my belief is that being in an unfamiliar area, the influences that were around them were minimal. And at that, over those years and time that they spent, they were able to quantify a lot of their beliefs that they that were fundamental to the movement that followed them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You and I could go down that road, but we'll leave that. Yeah.
It is interesting that all characters, at least in their stories, if there's a theme you can draw through how they began or how they came to be, you could almost say it is that there will be recipients, maybe arbitrary recipients of divine favor. It happens with Muhammad, it happens with Jesus, it happened with Abraham, it happens with so many other. And that's just how their stories are told. And yet, it is easier to believe one over the other. The question I'll keep pointing at is why. So, here's something else that I think is worth looking at. The idea of rejection and pilgrimage. Greg, was Jesus the Messiah accepted by the Jews?
No, we see him on the comment about pilgrimage when he started his ministry, so to speak, he goes off into the wilderness for about 40 days. And it's fairly well written up in the Gospels of his experience out there. So he has this wilderness experience. He comes back, and again, his popularity was quite high, and then ultimately it waned, and to the point where he stood alone.
Yeah. The religious establishment of his time,
Yes, rejected him.
they rejected him.
Yes,
They just didn't like the fella.
He had too many radical ideas for them.
Yeah. In around the year 610, Muhammad was about 40 years of age, and he began receiving the revelation of the Quran. So he's about 40 around that time. A year after the revelation, like this stuff, you have people like Hugh Kennedy, Mr. Director, put Hugh Kennedy up on the screen there. Like he's just a great Muslim scholar. He's a go-to guy for the early life of the Prophet. In fact, in one of his books, the Prophet and the Age of the Caliphate, the Prophet, that's Hugh there. The Prophet and the Age of the Caliphate. It's a fantastic read. But anyway, so after he receives the revelation, he begins his public ministry. Okay, and he is calling on people to acknowledge the glory of Allah. Okay, and pray to Him. In a similar way, Jesus, when he started his ministry earlier, he did call people back to God.
Yes.
Basically, and identified himself as the Son of God.
Yes.
Now, what happened with Muhammad, similar to Jesus the Messiah, firm opposition to his message arose from the ruling class in Mecca. The religious establishment in Mecca did not like his message. And it so happened that to some extent, I guess they viewed his message as a threat to their way of life. In a similar way that the religious establishment of Jesus saw his message as a threat to their way of life. Years later, when Muhammad's, guardian, the fellow who was constantly stepping in for him, when he died, the religious establishment in Mecca came after him and his followers. It wasn't pretty. And people started to, leave Mecca because there was just a lot of violence and all of this. So his followers leave Mecca and they're searching for some sort of sanctuary place, a place where they can have, a place where they can call home. Muhammad ultimately, now this is important, Muhammad ultimately leaves Mecca also. And he starts to journey looking for a place that he can call home. Okay.
He goes south, if I remember correctly.
The event of Muhammad's pilgrimage is so crucial in Islamic thought, the Hijrah. Okay. In Islamic tradition, even time starts to be measured by that event. So in Christianity, we will say, oh, this event happened in 700 AD. Okay. In Islamic thought, it is, this thing happened in 700 AH.
Okay.
After the Hijrah.
Interesting.
Because the Hijrah becomes that time, that event that
Sure.
demarcates time. So, but my point here is persecution, yeah. He suffers it also. Jesus the Messiah, persecution, he suffers it also. Two stories. How do you react, Greg?
Well, my reaction is this, is that I think anybody that offers change, offers a new way of looking at the world, a new way of understanding God, many times gets pushback because this upsets people's, psychological apple cart in that, hey, we don't really like what you've said here because this messes us up. We have to rethink about how we live, how we respond to others. So just leave town and take your philosophies with you. So that is a very human reaction. So I would argue that that doesn't make him profoundly more wonderful because he went through persecution. That happens.
It happened to Jesus.
Well, true, and if I recall correctly, and I stand to be corrected on this, it was Leonardo da Vinci showed that by dropping a pound of feathers off of the Tower of Pisa and a pound of rocks off the Tower of Pisa, it landed about the same time. And for 300 years later, the scientific community there said he was wrong. They put him in. They gave him a rough time about that. So here is something on a very scientific level getting flack and pushback. That doesn't make him a saint. That doesn't make him anything. What I'm trying to say is that new information will typically have pushback.
Okay.
So Jesus has pushback. Muhammad has pushback. I'm sorry. So did Leonardo get pushback.
So you're saying this is just a natural occurrence. There's just nothing. Hey, nothing to see here. Walk on past. That's all there is. Whoever has new information, you get pushback. Try introducing a new bill in Parliament. You'll get pushback.
Look what is happening between you and I. I give you new information, you pushback. No, what I'm trying to say is that yes, as sad as it is, that's not that doesn't make a person more qualified. It doesn't make their message more unique. It doesn't make it more right.
But Greg, you have an entire group of people that have ordered their way they think and have their being based on this story. I mean, Christianity,
Sure.
AD is actually a thing, you know.
And that I agree. And to me, to be honest with you, I'm still a little bit puzzled. As much as I appreciate the death of Christ, why did we have to tear up the calendar over that? I understand this is what we have. I'll accept it. I'm not going to create a new calendar. Just so record goes for it. But I'm just saying is that that's not the profoundness of the death of Christ because they changed the calendar. Oh wow.
Yeah, but the change of calendar, Greg, doesn't it signify that you now have a community that thinks this is very important? This event that just happened is very important.
So let me ask you this.
Go for it.
When Christ died, the next year, was the calendar changed?
I'll say no. No, but this is something that happened later as people find ways to engage with everyday living, and the death of Christ becomes a lens through which they view time.
But your comment about that the significance of the community is because of the calendar change. And what you're saying here to me is that it probably didn't happen the next year or the year after. So the significance of that wasn't noted at the time. It was only in retrospect did they say, oh, yeah, let's make that noteworthy. So the community had changed, had died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like most good things in life, it grew on them.
Yeah, it did. But what I'm coming to is that community
Yeah.
didn't say, folks, we have to change the calendar today. No, that
No.
didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. But I mean, the fact still remains.
Yeah, it's a nice fact. I agree with you.
We mark time using that as much as in the Islamic world they mark time using the hijrah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They mark the calendar, not time.
Well, calendar is time, Greg. Is it not? I mean,
It's a recognition. It's a
concept.
recognition of time, and I'm going to stick to that. It's a
Okay.
recognition. It is not time.
Yeah, it's a recognition of time.
It's not time.
Yeah, it's a tool for understanding
Yeah,
time.
Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah.
So, how is it? How is it then that it's we still don't? I mean, you have these two groups, and at times there'll be an animosity against each other. And here we are. I mean, we have stories, and I don't know. I would say they are equally mysterious,
That I will agree.
equally strange, but they are about to get even stranger. Let's talk about miracles. Greg, do you remember what are the 2 miracles or 3 that come to mind that Jesus the Messiah performed?
A resurrection of Lazarus is right up there.
Yeah, that one is.
That's pretty much it. When you start bringing people out of the grave, then everybody starts talking about that.
What's another one?
Well, the leprosy issues with there was a number of lepers that were healed.
So healings, miraculous healings, the miraculous resurrection of a dead fellow. I think he had been dead, 3 days?
Yeah, he was stinking.
Yeah, and he was resurrected.
Yeah.
One more. Test your Bible knowledge here. One more miracle.
Well, you have another dead child. The widow of Maine has her son changed or resurrected. You have the miracle where we alluded to earlier about the centurion having a ill servant. You have the lady that has the issue of blood.
Yeah.
So you have
There's several of them.
this. Yes.
Do you remember a time, Greg, when the religious establishment would often ask Jesus, hey, show us a sign.
Sure.
Show us a sign. Do you vaguely remember how Jesus used to respond to that? Just paraphrase it.
Yeah, I'm going to praise it exactly. It says, if you guys didn't believe the prophets,
Yeah.
you're not going to believe a miracle. I'm paraphrasing it.
The religious establishment of Muhammad's time used to ask miracles of Muhammad. Show us a sign. Show us a sign, they would say. And here's a paraphrase of how he would often respond. I tell you not that with me are the treasures of God, that I know what is hidden, nor I tell you that I am an angel, but I do follow what is revealed to me. Basically, all that I do is the will of
Yes.
He was the Father who has called me. Kind of similar to
Sure. Yeah,
what
and I
Jesus
agree
would
to you.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has a very familiar ring to it.
There's an interesting story in the Quran. I think it's 54:1. Mr. Director, you'll have to double check on that. says that the verse says the hour has drawn near and the moon has split asunder in the Quran. So it is believed, context, it is believed that Muhammad once asked God to split the moon. Okay. Split it into two halves. And God performed that miracle. And he performed it in the presence of the Quraysh. This is the establishment, the religious establishment of the time. And still skeptical, the Quraysh questioned travelers who had arrived days later if they had witnessed the wonder. And guess what? They did.
Yep.
Everyone was talking about it. The moon, it was split asunder. Muhammad does miracles. Jesus, the Messiah, does miracles. And I have another miracle for you. Oh, in fact, maybe let's talk about it this way.
Sure. And while you're talking about astronomical anomalies, we see in the birth of Christ the Star of Bethlehem that is often talked about. So you have this event too that again
a very astronomical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got a lot of comparisons.
Yeah. There's another miraculous thing that happened after the night journey that Muhammad took from Mecca to Jerusalem. Okay. The evil one requested Muhammad to describe the sacred house as proof of a miraculous night travel event. Okay. Someone, I think his name is Abu Jahal or something like that. They refer to him as the evil one. So they say, Muhammad, describe what you saw. The Prophet had traveled at night and thus he had not seen much detail, unfortunately. God is said to have miraculously sent, guess what name? Gabriel. Gabriel to descend to the sacred house and lift it up above the earth along with the surrounding mountains, the hills and the valleys and everything. And he spread it in front of Muhammad and Muhammad could see everything so he could respond to that. I mean, you tell these stories and I can almost see some Christians, saying, I don't know about that story. It's a miracle. It's a miracle that is detailed, about the Prophet, peace be upon him. It is a miracle that is detailed about him. And here's another one. So there was a...
So let me just to be clear here.
Yeah.
Muhammad arrives in Jerusalem. Am I correct on that?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody asks him a difficult question.
Yeah, so he travels to Jerusalem.
He travels
at night.
Yes, at night. And he arrives there, and he's asked about the evil one.
No, he comes back.
Oh, comes back.
Okay. And then when he's sharing this, someone says, oh, come on, not true, Muhammad. Not true. You're onto something crazy here. Okay, describe what it looks like inside. So
okay.
Like how the Pharisees would try and trap Jesus with
right.
good questions. Yeah. Describe what it looks like inside. You travel at night.
So to get himself out of this awkward situation, the angel comes down.
Gabriel
comes down, gives him a vision.
Gabriel lifts the entire city.
Oh, okay. Everything. Sorry. Got it. He lifts the whole city. Yeah. Oh, okay.
And then
it's not a vision. This is actual physical moving the whole city.
Well, I guess it could be in vision.
Yeah.
And then he puts it in front of Muhammad. And Muhammad, just takes a look at everything. Oh, yeah, that is there. And then he's able to describe everything. Yeah. Yeah. A bit hard to swallow, isn't it?
The motive is what I'm challenged by.
Well, the people want to know if he is who he says he is. I mean, you're claiming to be something special and you're telling us these things that are out of our comfort zone. Prove it. I think a similar thing happened to Jesus.
Okay, could you give me the references you're talking about?
When it comes to Jesus? Well, there's one story in particular where the Pharisees are questioning him about his identity. And Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. And they want to stone the poor guy for that because he just made a claim to be God. There is another incident where
Okay, so just stop there.
Yeah.
You just said they wanted to do what?
Stone him.
Stone him.
Yeah.
And Muhammad, they were going to kick him out of town, and he gets a vision to answer the question, so they accept him.
Well, not in particular, and this is good because we need to understand the stories of others.
Yeah.
No, Muhammad is preaching his message.
Okay.
He's preaching his message. It's
so to give credibility to his message.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay.
Exactly. And to add to that credibility piece,
Yeah.
let me give you a story that happened in the same context.
Sure.
I had to throw that in there. The prophet is also stated to have seen people during the nighttime travel. Just to add more to that, from a clan, and they were on a mountain searching for an ash-colored donkey. Was it donkey? No, camel.
Oh, okay.
They were looking for a camel. So this clan is on the mountain, and they are looking for a camel. So Muhammad is said to have shouted from the sky. Because remember, he's traveling in the sky. He shouted from the sky.
Sorry. Muhammad is now doing what, did you say?
Okay, so remember the night
Yes.
travel?
Yes.
So on his way, I guess back.
Okay.
So he's up in the sky. He's traveling back to Mecca from Jerusalem.
So this is before airplanes.
Before airplanes.
I just want to make that point clear here.
Before airplanes. And he looks down, he sees this tribe, and they are looking for a particular camel. I think it says it's ash-colored or something like that. And so Muhammad told them where to find the camel, because, he had the bird's eye view.
Yes.
Oh, it's that side, kind of thing. And so when he tells them that particular group of people a few days later arrive in Mecca. Actually, I think it was by sunrise. They arrive in Mecca. Okay.
With the camel.
With the camel.
Fantastic.
And so the religious establishment say, aha, okay, without listening to Muhammad, you tell us what happened. And they're like, oh yeah, he was just in the sky, and he told us where to find the camel, and we went, and voila, the camel was there.
I feel a little envious of those guys because I lose things every once in a while, and no, I don't hear any direction in the sky. Yeah.
It is also said, Greg, that some time in Medina, some 300 of Muhammad's companions needed water to perform, their religious obligations. Muhammad called for a bucket of water. He placed his hands in it, and suddenly water began to flow from between his fingers, enough for all his followers to use. Why, Greg, is it harder? Why? I know the answer to this question might be a bit hard to have a grip on. Why is it harder for us to believe the stories of others?
So here's the for me the interesting anomaly between the Muhammad narrative and the Christian narrative.
Yeah.
You've shared these stories about Muhammad being in an awkward situation, claiming to have gone at night to Jerusalem, and he gets this vision and explains it. He gives direction to camel herders about lost critters. This all is shared to support the uniqueness, the divinity of Muhammad.
Uniqueness, his prophetic
That's
ministry.
right, yeah. Okay. When you look at the Christian narrative, you see the followers of Jesus in difficult situations.
Yep.
There's very little rescue happens to these people.
Mm-hmm.
They're praying to their God also.
Yeah.
In the case of resurrecting people from the dead, the two that come to my mind, neither one of them was Jesus asked to perform those miracles.
Yeah.
Nobody. When he gets there, the widow is they're on route to bury the man. When he meets the sisters, they're a little upset with him because he's a dead person already.
Mm-hmm.
If he was sick, they would have said, "Hey, come," because that's the whole story. Why didn't you come?
Yeah.
So in those two cases, he performs a miracle without a request or without trying to get him. There was no need for him to perform those miracles.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Muhammad, he needs to have he needs credibility, and so God intervenes on his behalf and gives him a vision or transport. His followers are needing water, divine intervention on it.
Yeah.
You go over on the case here with the Christian narrative.
Yeah.
You don't
Feeding
see
of 5,000?
the 5,000
They were hungry?
They were hungry, but not starving. It doesn't say they were starving.
Greg, you're throwing it in there. I mean, they were hungry. They had been there for a little while listening to this young rabbi.
Okay. Arguably, they're starving. If I was there, I was a young kid, I'd be starving.
Yeah. And Jesus
Sure.
feeds 5,000 men, not counting women and children. 5,000 men, he feeds them from 5 scones and 2 fish. And he feeds 5,000.
So what did the disciples say to him beforehand?
They'll say, we don't have enough money to feed this group.
And do what?
Maybe we should send them home? Did they say that? Yeah, just send them home.
Send them home.
Yeah. And Jesus said...
they weren't saying, hey, should we be digging graves for them?
No, they were not.
No.
Yeah.
So they could have gone home.
Yeah, but I guess the point, Greg, is that they were...
It's a big point.
The point is that Jesus performed a miracle. I mean,
I agree.
All the other stuff around that, I mean, yeah, it's context. We can talk about it. But Jesus did a miracle. He fed people. Muhammad did a miracle. He fed his followers.
So in your story, we have and again, I have only been on the Arabian Peninsula once in my life, but my experience out there was a short time. It was pretty warm and sandy place.
Mm-hmm.
And if you run out of water out there,
you're in trouble.
You can count the hours and you're going to expire.
Yeah.
So you have a very dramatic situation when you lose water.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have a life and death situation taking place on that desert.
Yeah.
A divine intervention comes in, and guess what? If you're a disciple of Muhammad, you're going to have water. Yay. Mm-hmm. If you're a disciple of Christ, buddy, you're going to be. It doesn't seem to be working.
Well, it does work in my view, Greg, because remember, they followed Jesus.
They followed Jesus, yes. But what I'm trying to say is that you don't see, and again, I stand to be corrected on this. The miracles were always performed when there was a desire on behalf of the person. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Is that in Jesus' case? or in Muhammad's case, or in both cases?
In both cases.
Okay.
So there's a desire for both.
Yeah.
Desire for water, desire for getting healed, leprosy, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. on it.
Yeah. Yeah, so the desire is present.
The desire is present. So
Okay.
you have that consistent on that.
Yeah. Here's another consistency, maybe. Let me throw this into this conversation and see if we can make sense of it. Remember the narrative of Jesus, the Messiah says his enemies had no power over him unless he gave it to them. They could not do anything to him unless he allowed it to happen. There was one time when they came to arrest him. One of the gospel tells us that he said, "Who are you seeking?" And they all fell back. There was one time they wanted to stone him, and he was able to just walk
It's true.
through the crowd. They could not do anything to him unless he permitted it to happen. Well, at one time, Muhammad is in a war. Okay, he's fighting, and he decides to withdraw a bit so he can rest for a bit. It's a vicious warfare. And while he's sleeping under a tree, a fellow by the name of Duthur, Duthur, I think, sneaks up, and he puts his sword on Muhammad's neck, and Muhammad wakes up to see his sword has been pulled. And this fellow looks at the Prophet and he says to him, "Why are you not afraid?" Because Prophet looks like he's not worried about it. He's not troubled about it. So why are you not afraid? Muhammad responds by saying, "Oh, God will suffice me." He's all okay with it. God will suffice me. I'm fine. And at that very moment, this fellow was struck with a severe back pain. He drops his sword. He crumples to the ground. Muhammad stands up. He picks up the sword. And this fellow is wonderstruck. And from that day onwards, he's converted to Islam.
Fantastic.
His enemies had no power over him. The enemies of Jesus had no power over him. This is no longer now someone wanting something to be done on their behalf. This is the being, Muhammad himself. He's miraculous.
So what I'm coming to, and my question to you is,
Yeah.
in your studying of the Muslim belief system and Muhammad in particular, is Muhammad a divine? Does it have divine qualities to him?
I think now I like how you're asking that question, because I think that question is the root of why we do not. It's one of those questions that reveal that we have a greater problem behind the question. And so answering the question sometimes fails to address the greater problem that lies behind the questions. It's like, someone comes and he says, "Okay, do all people who stay in this area deserve to live?" Well, before we even answer that question, we need to talk about this mentality that you have that says there are other people who do not deserve to live. So we won't even venture to answer that question. At least that's how I think of it. So was Muhammad a prophet? Was he inspired? It already implies that no, there is something else that is at play here, some sort of
Divine quality.
yeah, there's this assumption that there's something that is not right about your story, and therefore should we accept this as, did Muhammad have some divine quality? Is it not possible for us to just say, you know what? Something is happening here and we acknowledge it. I just don't know what. I can say that, I am a Christian, at least I think I am. But am I able to say, to listen to the story of others, to listen to how in Buddhism, how the Buddha got his enlightenment and the questions he was asking. Can I listen to that story and say, there is something here. I just can't put my finger on it. And just, I don't know, respect it, accept it. It doesn't have to change my belief system. But the moment I say, whoa, your story, because all our stories are strange, depending on the perspective you're looking from. All our stories are strange. And all our stories are similar. Just give you one maybe more example. Jesus, the Messiah, did not leave a succession plan as in, okay, after this, okay, when I leave, I want you guys to develop a church. And, in this church, this is what's going to happen. It needs to have this, and this. There will be elders, there will be deacons, there will be this, there will be that. And no, they do that after.
Yes.
Jesus didn't leave a succession plan. Guess what? Muhammad did not leave a succession plan. And if memory serves me correctly, Abraham did not leave a succession plan. So there is no strategy that was left by the leaders of these. And so it's another similarity that you find in all their narratives. And why can't we just sit in awe of these great stories and say, there is something here?
The awe part we do sit in. Where I am, as you have been articulating here the last few minutes here, I am intrigued by the story that you've shared with us. And yes, I think we can respect the fact that God can work through anybody and provide divine influence and understanding to people of different religious affiliations. I'm 100% with you on that. But the thing is that what I like about the Christian narrative, to me, this is what resonates, is that, and again, I have not studied the Islam faith is probably as much as you have. But Muhammad speaks of God as in connections and in influences, and he speaks of God in quite an esoteric form.
That's a big word for me, Greg. What do you mean by esoteric? Should we ask Mr.
Yeah, Mr. Director, he can put up the definition up for us.
What does esoteric mean, Mr. Director? So we can make sure that Greg is not trying to drown me in big words here. Yeah. So esoteric, intended for or likely to be understood by a small number of people with a specialized knowledge or interest, like the Illuminati.
Okay.
It is very esoteric. It's insider knowledge kind of stuff.
And again, I'm using this in the term that it is understood in the Muslim belief system and how they have interpreted and understand God. Mm-hmm. What I'm coming to is that we have Muhammad speaking on behalf of God. He is agent on behalf of the divinity.
Yeah.
And he does, the divinity bails him out on different places, and we see that.
Yeah.
Helps his followers out.
And Jesus?
Jesus, on the other hand, steps in and says, I am the I am.
So Jesus says, I am God.
I am God.
True, that is a very big difference in their narratives. All the other ones do not claim to be God.
That's right.
Jesus, the Messiah, does make that claim. And it's a claim that I think should be evaluated on its own merit. Say, okay, he claimed this. How do we know it to be true? And now, and that is within the realm of Christianity. I mean, I have read that claim and I've looked into, okay, is there any value to this claim? And as a practicing Christian, I will say, yes, there is. There is value to this claim. But should I then make that a meta-narrative that I should share with my Muslim friend? That I should then, push to my other friends who are Jews?
So, just to add to your story, and I'm going to add my understanding here, is that in the Muslim community, the works of Muhammad were actually put together, written down. They were in oral form for a couple of 100 years. And it was only after that, again, sometime we may want to talk about memory.
Yeah.
It was then written down and put in a form and a fashion that they have the Quran is built on. So what I'm coming to is that is information that the writers put together for, again, that time and place. Likewise with the Christian thing. Jesus does not write anything down. The writers are writing from the first-hand experience on their experience, their interaction with Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very valuable component to the narrative.
Mm-hmm. So first-hand experience.
Exactly.
Someone who says, hey, I was there, I saw it, this is what happened.
That's right. In the case of Jesus, again, much like his predictions of when he was going to be birthed, we have predictions of when he's going to die and be resurrected.
Yeah.
Again, these predictions came through and on time and on place. So we have both a very, some parallels, what I'm coming to.
Yeah.
In the case of Jesus, we see him being resurrected. And I'm still not sure, but if memory serves you correctly, Muhammad is still in the grave. So we have a difference on it. What does that make one story better or another? Not necessarily, but the value that Christianity has, and we go back to our first discussion about the three primary meta-narratives that we have, and both of them, the two other than the Christian narrative that we follow today, is that there is a God that nobody really knows, and we're in trouble. We're looking out over our back, and you've commented on some of your experiences that you saw growing up in Africa. But yet we now have a God that has come to this earth, and we see him walking around, talking, and interacting. The story of Thomas says to Jesus, "Show me the Father." This is after his resurrection.
Yeah.
I love Thomas. Some people are frustrated with him. I think he asked some brilliant questions.
Yeah.
And what did Jesus say? hey,
I've been with you all these years.
yeah, come on, man.
Yeah. How can you say, show me the Father? Yeah.
What you're a slow learner.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am. So now we have a very interesting picture that we can talk about. And I think this is the thing that I keep going back to. The Christian narrative adds value to me because I see and I understand who God is in a much better way than I would in any other of these narratives. And there was a time in my life that I was not convinced that the Christian narratives are right. And I did a pretty good, I kicked some tires on some of these other belief systems. But I came back because of this one thing. The Christian understanding of God, the deity, the creator, is phenomenal. It has so much that we can live by. And when people say, well, tell me about your God, I can speak to it with a high degree of authority. People of other belief systems are saying, well, here's what we think he is. He kind of meets us here. He kind of does that. We see some godlike things, and we're going to assign those things to him. That's a bit of a faith stretch. And on my end of it, I need less faith because I have seen a God. I know it. Let me rephrase this.
Yeah.
I have a much higher level of confidence that the universe is working for my good.
Yeah. Greg, I hear what you're saying, and I want to encourage our viewers, encourage people to remember that we have a shared humanity, and our religious meta narratives, these stories, be it miracles, predestination, and marriages, and all of these things that form the religious stories we value so much. I think we should hold them in. We should remember that our shared humanity is of, I would argue, greater importance.
Yes.
And so, if we're going to enjoy our shared humanity together, what good does it do for you to despise me and my foundational stories in an effort to celebrate our shared humanity? Like it just seems to not work. I'm in the Christian narrative. We're all about, there's this push for sharing, like you've expressed, the goodness of our idea, our vision of who God is. And I think that is good to bring that to the table. But that should never, in my view, it should never be attached to a great system of despising the stories of others.
And I think your point is a very good one. We should respect these stories. We should hold them with utmost care. We should not denigrate them. We should be sensitive to the people that hold those stories. And I have from a personal level, I feel it's not a very Christian thing to do, is to be I'm not sure what the word to use, but I don't want to belittle their stories.
Yeah.
And that is not my role on it.
Yeah. And yet that happens a lot with
It does,
people.
yes. But I think when asked, if they ask me, I then have the opportunity, the right to say, look, let me tell you about who I understand God to be. And I can share with them the goodness of God, the softness of God, the interest of God, the encouragement of God. And I see a universe that is working for my interest and my good.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
I can share that.
Yeah.
But I do not have the right to go out and to destroy that person's narrative.
I think this is a lost art, the art of holding our stories or our beliefs or our identities in conversation with each other. You know, it's something maybe in the future you and I need to just, have an entire series where we talk about how does that look like? How do we do it? But, again, we've come to that point once more. Our viewers, there's a lot of context that is needed. And I'm sure there are some people who are watching this who are like, oh, no, you didn't tell the whole story of Islam. You didn't tell the whole story of Christianity. You didn't tell the whole story of Buddhism. You didn't tell. Do you know what? Tell us that story.
Yeah.
Tell us that story. We want to be in conversation with you. We want to embrace your story. We want to bring these stories in conversation with each other. We want to celebrate our shared humanity. And we have something for you for celebrating that. Please go online, buy yourself that Never Black or White t-shirt, and buy it for your friends, buy it for your loved ones, buy it for whoever. And please just like, share, subscribe, and until the next time we meet for another conversation, how about you take time to open yourself up to the stories of others?